Ethan Walker had always believed that life became quieter as a person grew older, but for him, the silence felt deeper than most men his age. He lived alone on a calm ranch at the edge of a small town near the New Mexico-Arizona border. His days began before sunrise, when the sky was still cool and soft, and ended long after the last traces of daylight faded behind the distant hills. He had grown used to a life of routine, feeding horses, checking fences, repairing old tools, and riding across the open land. It was a simple life, peaceful in its own way, but also empty in places he preferred not to think about. Even though Ethan looked like a strong cowboy, wide shoulders, dusty boots, sun-tanned face, those who truly knew him understood he spoke little. He kept his thoughts inside, locked somewhere deep, like old boxes stored in a forgotten attic. Most people thought he was simply shy, but the truth was more complicated. His childhood had been full of sudden moves, family struggles, and long nights when he had felt uncertain about the future. Those memories were scattered now, like dried leaves carried away by the desert wind. But not every memory was sad. Somewhere inside him, beneath layers of grown-up worries, a softer memory lived. A memory of warm days, river water on his feet, and a girl with dark, lively eyes. A girl who laughed with the kind of freedom that could make even the desert feel alive. A girl whose name he once whispered easily, but time had pulled that memory far away, so far that Ethan did not even realize he had forgotten her. Years ago, Ethan's father had worked closely with a nearby Apache community. Because of this, young Ethan spent many afternoons there, learning small things about their horses, their crafts, and their stories. He had enjoyed their kindness, their patience, and the way they welcomed him like he belonged. But he was only a child, and when his family moved away because of his mother's health, everything changed. Childhood friendships faded. The desert, once familiar, became distant, and the girl he used to run beside became nothing more than a faint shape in his mind. Now, as an adult, Ethan rarely thought about those years. He focused on the present, his chores, his ranch, and the quiet world he had built. He believed that the past no longer had anything to offer him. But life has a way of returning the things we forget, especially the things that once mattered. One warm afternoon, when the sun hung lazily above the town, Ethan rode into the local market. He wasn't the kind of man who enjoyed crowds, but he needed supplies, grain for the horses, a few basic tools, and maybe some fresh fruit if the stalls still had any left. The marketplace was lively that day. Families browsed handmade jewelry, children tugged at their parents' hands, and vendors called out the best deals of the morning. The smell of roasted corn and sweet bread drifted through the air. Ethan walked through the aisles quietly, nodding politely at a few people he recognized. He preferred not to draw attention, and most people respected that. But as he moved toward a small stall that sold carved wooden items, he felt something unusual, a sense that someone was watching him. Not in a worrying way, but with a kind of familiarity, as if a pair of eyes were searching for something long lost. He stopped near a table filled with small handmade ornaments, animals, tiny bowls, and decorative shapes. As he looked down at them, he felt a strange tug. The style of carving seemed familiar, almost like something he had seen long ago, but he could not place where. Before he could think more about it, he sensed a presence beside him. He lifted his eyes. A young woman stood just a few steps away. She was tall, graceful, and dressed in traditional patterns that blended beautifully with the desert colors. Her hair was long, dark, and braided neatly. Her eyes were bright, warm, and peaceful, yet they also held something else, something deep, something searching. She was looking directly at him, not with curiosity, but with recognition, as if she knew him. As if she had been waiting. Ethan blinked softly, unsure how to react. He had seen many faces in town, but he was certain he had never seen hers. And yet, something about her felt strangely familiar, like the melody of a song he once knew but could no longer hum. He didn't say anything at first. He wasn't the type to speak without reason. But the woman continued to stare at him with gentle confidence. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, do I know you?" The woman smiled in a calm, gentle way. It was a smile full of emotion, not just happiness, but memory, and perhaps a little surprise that he didn't immediately recognize her. Slowly, she stepped closer, keeping her eyes on his. "You don't remember me, cowboy?" she asked softly, the corners of her lips lifting. "I'm the girl you loved when you were a child." The words fell like a warm shock through Ethan's chest. His breath hitched as if the air around him had thickened. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He stared at her again, trying to connect her face with someone from his childhood, but his mind felt like a dusty room he had never cleaned. Loved? As a child. Who was she talking about? He studied her eyes. Something whispered inside him. Her eyes were familiar. He remembered a girl who used to race him across the dry riverbed. A girl who laughed with her whole heart. A girl who once picked wildflowers and tucked them behind her ear, only to tease him that he should learn to do the same. A girl he had promised to visit again, but that girl's face was small, soft, childish. The woman in front of him was confident, grown, and stunning in a quiet way. He took a slow breath. "I'm sorry. I don't—" Before he could finish, she nodded gently. She wasn't hurt or disappointed. She had expected his confusion. "It's all right," she said kindly. "A long time has passed." Her voice was calm, patient, the same way someone speaks to a friend who simply needs time to remember something important. Ethan felt a tiny tremble inside him, not fear, but the sensation of something shifting, as if an old door in his mind had begun to open. She extended her hand. "My name is Nina." Nina. The name slid through his mind like sunlight returning to a dark room. He had not heard that name in years. But the moment he heard it, something warm stirred inside him. A memory of a girl running barefoot along the sand, her laughter echoing across the water. A memory of her standing beside him while the wind played with her hair. A memory of a carved wooden horse, small enough to fit in his palm, which he had once made with childish hands and shy pride. Nina. He whispered the name before he even realized it. Nina. Her smile deepened, and Ethan suddenly felt as though he were 8 years old again, standing beside the river where their friendship had begun. Confusion mixed with familiarity, time mixed with memory. He looked at her again, fully this time, trying to see the child in the woman. I do remember a little," he managed to say, "but it's like a dream." She nodded. "I understand. You had to leave quickly back then. You were young. Life must have been heavy for you." Her voice held no blame, only compassion. Ethan felt a quiet ache in his chest. He remembered the day his family had left, the hurried packing, the uncertain expressions on his parents' faces. His mother had been ill, and everything had felt rushed and confusing. He'd promised Nina he would come back soon. But life had swept him in another direction. Ethan looked around the market for a moment, trying to gather his thoughts. The noise, the chatter, the colors. They all felt distant now. All he could focus on was the woman standing before him. The past he had forgotten was suddenly alive, breathing, standing in front of him with kind eyes. How did you recognize me?" he asked. She laughed softly, a sound that seemed to carry the same warmth he had once known. "You still look like the boy I knew. Taller, older, of course, but your eyes haven't changed." Ethan didn't know what to say. He felt both embarrassed and strangely honored. It wasn't every day that someone appeared from the past with such certainty. Nina looked at him thoughtfully, as if studying how much of the boy inside the man still remained. I didn't expect to find you here, she said. I came back only for a community project. But when I saw you, I knew. Ethan felt a slow, gentle smile form. It wasn't something he forced. It came naturally, drawn out by her presence. Well, he said softly, I'm glad you said something. I wouldn't have remembered on my own. She nodded, completely understanding. Memories come in their own time. For a long moment, they simply stood there, two people reconnecting across the distance of many years. The marketplace moved around them, but in their small space, time felt still. Ethan didn't know what the future held or what this sudden return of his past meant. But as he looked into Nina's eyes, he felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Something warm, something hopeful, something like a beginning. And he didn't want to forget her again. Ethan did not know how long he stood there in the market after Nina spoke those unforgettable words. It felt as if time had stopped, as if the air around him had changed its weight. For years he had lived quietly, without expecting anything new or surprising to enter his life. But now, here she was, a woman who knew parts of his past better than he did. A woman who carried memories he had let slip away like sand through open fingers. Nina watched him with gentle patience, as if she understood exactly what was happening inside him. She did not rush him or push him to remember more. She simply stood there, allowing him the space to breathe and gather himself after such an unexpected shock. Ethan finally took a slow breath. So you're really her, he said quietly, his voice a little unsure, like someone stepping on uncertain ground. Yes, Nina replied softly. I'm the girl you used to run around with, the one you tried to teach rope tricks, the one who painted your palm with river mud because you said it would make you faster. A small laugh escaped her lips as she recalled the memory. Ethan blinked, surprised. He didn't remember teaching rope tricks, but something about painted palms stirred a faint, blurry picture in his mind. A little girl with messy hair, grinning as she smeared mud on his hand. He felt a small warmth growing inside him, like a forgotten sunset returning. Nina, he repeated slowly, letting the name sit on his tongue. It's strange. I remember pieces, but they feel so far away. That happens, Nina said. Childhood is like that. But sometimes only one moment is enough to bring everything back. Ethan wasn't sure if anything could bring all of it back, but he appreciated her calm confidence. There was something comforting about the way she spoke, something gentle yet strong, the way someone speaks when they carry history with grace. They moved away from the center of the busy market, walking slowly along the quieter path near the craft stalls. The warm afternoon sun fell softly on them, and a peaceful breeze swept across the open space. So, what brought you back? Ethan asked after a moment. Nina touched the small necklace she wore, made of carved wood and simple beads. I came to help with a heritage project, she said. We're collecting stories, songs, and memories from the elders. We are trying to preserve everything for the next generation. Ethan listened with interest. Sounds important. It is, she said with a smile. Our elders carry so much wisdom. If we don't record it now, it might disappear. Her words made Ethan think. He wondered how many memories he had let disappear without even trying to save them. Perhaps that was why seeing Nina again felt like waking up a forgotten part of himself. They walked in silence for a few moments. The rhythm felt natural, not awkward. As they passed a fruit stall, Nina stopped to look at the bright oranges and soft peaches, but her attention drifted back to Ethan. You know, she said gently, I didn't expect you to remember everything, not right away. You were young and your family left so suddenly. Ethan nodded slowly. There was so much happening back then, he said. I guess I didn't handle it well. Maybe forgetting things was my way of coping. Nina's eyes softened with understanding. You don't have to explain. You were a child. He appreciated that she wasn't making him feel guilty or ashamed. Her presence felt easy, like sunlight after a long winter. It made him realize just how long he had been living in emotional quietness, almost like sleep. They continued walking until they reached a shaded corner where a few benches sat beneath tall trees. Nina took a seat on one of them, and Ethan sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance but feeling strangely comfortable. I remember your grandmother, Ethan said thoughtfully. She used to make the sweetest flatbread I ever tasted. Nina's face lit up. Yes, she still makes it. Well, she tries. Nina laughed softly. She's older now, but she still has her strong spirit. I'm glad she's doing well, Ethan said. And she remembers you, Nina added with a warm smile. She mentioned you when I told her I saw a familiar face today. Ethan raised an eyebrow. She remembers me? After all these years? She remembers every child who ever played in our village, Nina said proudly. She said you were kind. She said you used to share your biscuits even though you were protective of your snacks. Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks. He had been protective of food as a child. It was one of the few things he felt in control of back then. But he remembered offering biscuits to a girl once. Maybe that girl had been Nina. Your grandmother has a good memory, he said, still amazed. She remembers because your presence meant something, even if you forgot some of it, Nina said gently. Ethan looked down at his hands. I didn't choose to forget, he said slowly. It just happened. I know, she replied softly. Her understanding felt like a quiet comfort. A group of children ran past them, laughing and chasing each other. The sight brought a soft smile to Nina's face, and something stirred in Ethan's chest. He could almost see the two of them running like that long ago, free, young, unaware of how fast life would move one day. So what about you? Ethan asked. What have the years been like for you? Nina looked thoughtful. Busy, she said. Full of learning. After you left, life continued, but I always remembered those days. I grew up with my grandmother. I learned our traditions, our stories. Later, I studied art and language so I could help keep those traditions alive. That's impressive, Ethan said sincerely. She shrugged lightly, smiling. It's just what felt right. And you're back for the project? He asked. Yes, she said. But also, I felt something pulling me back, like I needed to reconnect with this land. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood that feeling more than he expected. Sometimes the land called a person home even when the heart was unsure why. As they sat there, the afternoon sun softened into golden light. People slowly started packing their market stalls. The calmness of the moment wrapped around Ethan and Nina like a warm blanket. So, Cowboy, Nina said playfully, mimicking the name she used when she first spoke to him. What have you been doing all these years, besides forgetting old friends? Ethan chuckled, a rare sound for him. Just ranch work, he said. Waking up early, fixing things that break, and trying to keep everything running. Sounds peaceful, she said. It is, he replied. Sometimes maybe too peaceful. Nina leaned forward slightly, studying him with quiet curiosity. Do you ever feel lonely? The question surprised him, not because it was rude. Nina spoke it with genuine care, but because no one ever asked him something so direct. Sometimes, Ethan admitted after a moment. I guess that's part of choosing a quiet life. Quiet can be good, she said. But not if it makes you forget how to connect with people. Her words touched something inside him. He wondered how many years he had spent building walls he never intended to build, walls made of silence, routine, and avoidance. Maybe you're right, he said softly. Nina smiled. I usually am. Ethan laughed again, and the sound felt freeing. A small breeze rustled the leaves around them. Nina brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You know," she said quietly, "when I saw you at the market today, it felt unreal. I didn't think you'd be here, and I didn't think you'd still look like the same boy I once knew." Ethan smiled gently. "And I didn't think I'd ever meet someone from my childhood again." "Life brings people back," Nina said. "Sometimes when the time is right." Ethan looked at her with a soft seriousness. "I'm glad fate brought you back today." Nina's eyes glimmered slightly, touched by his words. "I'm glad too." They sat together until the last vendor packed up and the market became quiet. The sky turned orange, then soft pink, and the shadows grew longer. Finally, Nina stood. "I should head home. My grandmother will be waiting." Ethan stood as well. "Will I see you again?" Nina tilted her head with a gentle smile. "Do you want to?" "Yes," he said honestly, without hesitation. "Then you will," she replied. "I'm not going far." She took a step back, giving him one last warm look. "Take care, cowboy." Then she turned and walked away, her figure slowly blending with the soft colors of the evening. Ethan watched her go, feeling something inside him shift, something waking up, something beginning. He knew one thing for certain. He didn't want this to end as a single meeting. He wanted to remember her. He wanted to understand the past he had lost. And he wanted to see where this new chapter might lead. The next morning, Ethan woke earlier than usual. The sky was still dim, and the air carried a quiet chill that touched his skin. But even before he stepped out of bed, his mind was already full of thoughts of Nina, full of questions, full of feelings he had not experienced in years. He tried to tell himself that it had only been one meeting, one conversation. But something inside him refused to treat it as ordinary. Something told him that meeting Nina again meant more than chance. As he fed the horses and checked the water troughs, he kept glancing toward the desert road. Maybe she would pass by. Maybe he would see her walking with the same calm confidence she had shown yesterday. But the road stayed empty, except for the wind that rolled small clouds of dust across it. By noon, Ethan found himself unable to focus on his chores the way he usually did. Every sound seemed to remind him of her laughter. Every warm breeze reminded him of the quiet warmth he felt sitting beside her on that bench. Finally, he decided that he would go visit her community. He wasn't sure if he should or if he was welcome, but Nina had said he would see her again if he wanted to, and he certainly did. He took a slow ride toward the Apache village, the horses' steps steady and familiar. The path twisted through dry fields, gentle hills, and scattered desert plants. The sky above stretched endlessly, turning brighter as the sun climbed high. When he reached the edge of the community, he slowed down. He wanted to be respectful, wanted to make sure he didn't enter too suddenly. As he approached, he saw homes built with tradition and care, the colors blending beautifully with the land around them. A few people greeted him with gentle nods, and Ethan returned the gesture quietly. He felt a little nervous, unsure if he should ask for Nina or wait for her to appear naturally. But he didn't have to wait long. Nina stepped out of a small building, holding a basket filled with handmade items. When her eyes met Ethan's, a smile spread naturally across her face. The same sincere smile he remembered from the market. "You came," she said warmly, walking toward him. Ethan nodded with a small, almost shy smile. "I hope it's all right." "It is," she said. "I'm glad you're here." Nina led him through the community, explaining small things along the way, whose home was whose, what different areas were used for, and how the elders gathered every evening to share stories. Ethan listened closely, appreciating every detail. He felt honored that she trusted him enough to show him these parts of her world. After a while, Nina guided him toward a small workshop space. Inside, shelves were filled with handmade crafts, wood carvings, painted bowls, beadwork, and woven fabrics. The room smelled like wood shavings, earth, and a hint of fresh sage. "This is where I work," Nina said proudly. Ethan looked around, impressed. "It's beautiful," he said. "Everything feels full of life." She nodded. Each piece carries a story. Then she walked toward a quiet corner where a small wooden box sat. She opened it carefully and pulled out something wrapped in soft cloth. Ethan watched her with curiosity. "I kept something for a long time," she said. "I want you to see it." She unwrapped the cloth slowly, revealing a small wooden horse. Simple, slightly uneven, but crafted with obvious effort. Ethan's breath caught. I made that," he whispered, feeling a strange warmth rise inside him. "Yes," Nina said softly. "You gave it to me before you left." He stared at the little carving, amazed. He had forgotten almost everything about making it, but seeing it now brought back the faintest memory. His small hands shaping the wood clumsily, Nina cheering him on, and his shy pride when he finally handed it to her. "You kept it all these years?" he asked, his voice full of quiet disbelief. Nina nodded. "It reminded me of you," she said. "And of the days when we spent time together." Ethan felt something gentle unfold inside his heart. He didn't know how to express the emotion fully, but Nina's gesture touched him more deeply than he expected. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping it, for remembering." Nina smiled. "Some memories are special. They stay with us no matter how much time passes." Ethan looked at the small horse again and felt a wave of gratitude. He hadn't realized how much of his childhood he had closed away until she reopened it with something as simple as a wooden carving. They spent the next hour walking through the village together. Nina introduced him to a few people. Kind elders with gentle faces, children playing with handmade toys, and friends who greeted Nina warmly. Everyone treated Ethan respectfully, though with curiosity. Some remembered him as the quiet little boy who used to visit often. He felt humbled and thankful that his presence was still remembered here. Later in the afternoon, Nina brought him to a calm place near the river, where they had played as children. The water was low and gentle, sparkling softly under the sunlight. Ethan stood there in silence, letting the scene wash over him. It felt strange yet familiar. He could almost see two small children running around, splashing water, laughing. "This place," Ethan whispered. "I think I remember it." Nina nodded. "We spent a lot of time here." Ethan sat on a smooth rock near the riverbank. Nina sat beside him, her hands resting on her lap. The quiet between them felt peaceful. "What happened after I left?" Ethan asked softly. Nina took a deep breath. "A lot, I guess. I grew up with my grandmother. She taught me our traditions, our stories, our craft. Sometimes life was hard, but I had strong people around me." Ethan listened closely, absorbing each word. "I always wondered how you were," Nina continued. "I didn't know if you remembered me, but even if you didn't, I hoped you were fine." Ethan felt a mixture of gratitude and regret. "I didn't mean to forget," he said quietly. "It just happened. My mother was sick. We moved quickly. Everything felt confusing. I guess my mind pushed things away." Nina looked at him with understanding. "You don't need to apologize. You were young." But Ethan shook his head lightly. "Still, I wish I had remembered sooner." She smiled gently. "You're remembering now. That's what matters." They sat quietly for a while. The wind moved gently across the water. A few birds flew overhead, their shadows gliding on the river surface. Being there, beside Nina, made Ethan feel grounded in a way he hadn't felt in years. As the afternoon stretched on, they talked about their lives. Simple things, honest things. Nina told him about her dreams, her desire to preserve her culture's stories, her journey of becoming an artisan. Ethan shared bits of his ranch life, how he learned to fix almost anything, how he found peace in caring for animals, and how he sometimes felt like he was living in the past without realizing it. The more they talked, the more Ethan felt an invisible distance between them slowly disappearing. Nina wasn't just a childhood memory. She was someone strong, thoughtful, warm-hearted, someone whose presence made the world feel lighter. At one point, Nina laughed while telling a small story about her grandmother's attempts to teach her weaving. The sound of her laughter made Ethan smile more than he expected. It reminded him of the gentle joy he used to feel around her as a child. "You laugh the same way you used to," Ethan said quietly. Nina looked at him in surprise. "You remember that?" "Not exactly," he admitted, "but something about it feels right." She smiled, touched by his words. As the sun lowered, painting the sky in soft orange and gold, Ethan realized he didn't want the day to end. "I'm glad I came today," he said sincerely. "I'm glad too," Nina replied. They walked back toward the center of the community slowly. At the edge of the village, Ethan paused, looking back at the path they had taken, the river, and the peaceful homes. "Can I come again?" he asked, unsure if he sounded too hopeful. Nina's face softened with warmth. "You can come any time." Her response settled something inside him, like a quiet promise. Before he left, she touched his hand lightly, not holding it, just a gentle tap. "It's good to reconnect with the past," she said. "Sometimes it helps us understand who we are now." Ethan nodded, feeling her words settle deep within him. As he rode back home through the evening air, he felt different, lighter, more alive. The land around him looked the same as always, but he saw it with new eyes. The wind felt gentler, the sky wider, the world more open. He couldn't fully explain it, but he knew this was the beginning of something important. He was remembering. He was reconnecting. And for the first time in years, he felt like life was moving again, with hope, with warmth, and with the possibility of something beautiful forming between him and the girl who once held his childhood heart. The next morning arrived with a soft golden light spreading across the land. The sky was clear, and the early breeze carried the smell of warm earth and desert plants waking up under the sun. John stepped out of his small cabin, stretching his arms and breathing deeply. Last night had felt like a dream, but today everything was real. Alina was real. Her story was real. Their childhood promise was real, and now he had to decide what he wanted to do with all of it. He walked toward the river where she said she would meet him. His boots moved over the ground slowly, not because he was tired, but because he was thinking deeply. For years, he had believed his past was over. He had convinced himself that new dreams mattered more than old memories. But now, those memories had returned in the form of a grown woman with bright eyes and a calm voice that touched something deep inside him. As he approached the river, he saw Alina standing under a tall cottonwood tree. She looked different today, more relaxed, more hopeful. The sunlight rested on her long, dark hair, making it shine, and her clothes moved gently in the morning wind. She turned as soon as she heard his footsteps and smiled, a soft, warm smile that felt familiar even after all the years. "You came," she said quietly, as though she was unsure he would. "I said I would," John replied. "I don't break promises." She nodded, looking down at the smooth stones by her feet. "I didn't know if your heart still remembered me." "Yesterday you looked lost." "I was," he admitted, "but I've been thinking." Alina waited, silent but attentive. John continued, "You asked me to remember you, and I do now. I remember everything, everything that mattered. I remember you saving me from being lonely. I remember your laughter. I remember how we promised to meet again. I didn't know if you would keep the promise, but you did. And that means something to me." A soft expression passed over Alina's face. Part relief, part emotion, part something deeper that words couldn't easily describe. She stepped closer, her hands clasped behind her back as if she was unsure whether she had the right to reach out to him. "I waited because I believed," she said. "People forget so easily. But I felt your promise inside me like a song that never ends." They both sat near the river. The water moved with a soft sound, carrying reflections of the sky. John picked up a small pebble and rolled it between his fingers. Alina watched him patiently. "What will you do now?" she finally asked. John looked at the horizon. "I don't know yet, but I want to understand your world, and I want you to understand mine. Maybe then we can decide something together." Her eyes brightened with a hope she had tried to hide until now. "You want to stay with us?" she asked softly. "I want to know if that life fits me," he replied honestly. "And I want to know if I fit in your heart the way I used to." Alina lowered her head for a moment, gathering courage. When she looked up, her eyes shone with emotion. "You never left my heart." Hearing that made something inside John shift. He wasn't sure what to say. He had never imagined someone could wait for him for so long, holding on to a childhood memory with such strength. It humbled him. They spent the morning walking through the valley, talking about their pasts. Alina told him stories of her village, how she grew up, who taught her to ride, how her community lived close to nature and respected every living thing. She described her grandmother, a wise woman who had told her, "People who touch your heart once will return to it someday." John listened quietly, absorbing every detail. The more she spoke, the more he realized how different their worlds were, but also how beautiful the connection between them had once been. When it was his turn, John shared stories from his childhood, how he learned to ride horses, how he traveled with his father, and how he sometimes felt lonely even when surrounded by people. He explained his life as a grown man, the work he did, and the responsibilities he carried. Alina listened with full attention, as though each word mattered. "You carry heavy thoughts," she said gently. "Maybe," he replied, "but I'm learning to let go of some of them." They walked along the riverbank until noon. As the sun rose higher, Alina guided him toward her village. He had expected to feel nervous, but instead he felt calm. He wanted to understand her world, because he wanted to understand her. The village welcomed him with quiet curiosity. There were small homes made from natural materials, smoke rising gently from fires, and people working peacefully. Children ran between the trees, laughing. The whole place felt warm, grounded, and free. An older woman approached them, Alina's grandmother. Her face carried wisdom, and her kind eyes studied John for a moment. "So this is the boy who once shared my granddaughter's childhood," she said with a soft smile. John bowed his head respectfully. "Yes, ma'am. You look like a man who has traveled far, but distance does not erase the truth of the heart." Alina blushed lightly. Her grandmother continued, "If you are here to understand, then you are welcome. But if you are here with uncertainty, do not let uncertainty become a shadow over my granddaughter." John nodded. "I understand." Alina's grandmother smiled again, satisfied. "Good. Then let the day begin." The village embraced John slowly but warmly. He helped gather water, learned simple phrases of their language, and listened to stories from the elders. Alina stayed close to him, explaining everything patiently, guiding him through every new experience. They laughed together, just as they used to when they were children, and every moment felt natural. When evening fell, the sky turned a shade of deep orange, and the air became soft and cool. The villagers gathered near a fire to share music and stories. John sat beside Alina, feeling a peace he hadn't known for years. After the gathering, they walked away from the fire toward a quiet hill where the stars shone brightly. "John," Alina said softly, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer with your true heart." He nodded, waiting. "Now that you have seen my world, what do you want to do? I know you have a life out there. I will not hold you if you want to return." John took a deep breath. He looked at her, really looked at her, the girl he had loved as a child, now standing before him as a strong, graceful woman. "I want to stay," he said finally, "not because I'm running away from anything, but because being here feels right. Being with you feels right." A soft breath escaped her lips, a breath filled with relief and happiness. "You're sure?" she asked. He nodded. "I'm sure. I want to build something real. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I want you in it." Alina stepped closer, her eyes shining under the moonlight. "Then we walk this path together." He smiled. Together. They stood there quietly, the desert wind moving gently around them. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic moments, just two hearts finally finding their way back to each other after years of silence and distance. John felt a deep peace settle inside him. He had traveled many places, met many people, chased many dreams, but none of it compared to the feeling of being exactly where he was meant to be. Alina slipped her hand into his, soft, steady, and warm. And under the open sky, surrounded by the calm beauty of the land, they began the first step of a new life. A life built on childhood memories, adult understanding, and a promise that had lived quietly in both of them for years, a promise that had finally brought them home.